be seen. You are in the story unfolding. You are in the mystery, the glory and the victory. You are in the story unfolding. Emmanuel, God with us. You are the constant in the promise, the everlasting one. Emmanuel, be lifted high. Hope for the hopeless, peace for the broken. Emmanuel the Christ. Presence interwoven within every moment. You are my first and my last breath. You are in the valley, your faithfulness abounding. You are my first and my last breath. Emmanuel, God with us. You are the constant in the promise, the everlasting one. Emmanuel, be lifted high. Hope for the hopeless, peace for the broken. Emmanuel the Christ. Come now, longly expected Jesus, born to set thy people free from our fears and sins. Release us, let us find our rest in thee. Come now, longly expected Jesus, born to set thy people free from our fears and sins. Release us, let us find our rest in thee. Emmanuel, God with us. You are the constant in the promise, the everlasting one. Emmanuel, be lifted high. Hope for the hopeless, peace for the broken. Emmanuel the Christ. Emmanuel, God with us. You are the constant in the promise, the everlasting one. Emmanuel, be lifted high. Hope for the hopeless, peace for the broken. Emmanuel the Christ with us.
Whenever you're ready.
Hey, so we're going to talk about peace and Christmas. When you hear peace and Christmas, what do you think about?
You know, what stands out to me really is like when Jesus was born, like the world was a mess. It was a mess politically.
Truth, yeah.
Right? It was a mess religiously. There was a big division between the religious leaders and the regular people. It was a mess culturally. There was fights and arguments among the crowds. It was just like a chaotic time. And there was peace. But the peace that was around when Jesus was born was like peace through the Roman Empire. It was peace through power. It was peace through control, peace through violence. And then Jesus comes and he offers us like a brand new way of having peace. That's what stands out to me with the birth of Jesus. Yeah.
When really, I think of, he brought peace in many different spheres, kind of like what Jonathan was saying, that first there was peace with God. Jesus made it possible that we'd have peace with God, but also we could have peace with ourselves, and we'd have peace with others, and he even came to bring peace ultimately on earth, which I think there's a song about or something, you know. But I mean, it ultimately, like even personally, like it applies not just culturally or not just, but in your individual families. All of us know stories of a family that was a mess like the culture back then, and then Jesus came in and all of a sudden began bringing peace to an entire family. It just makes an incredible difference.
I can't help but think of nativity scenes. You know, you drive around Christmas time, nativity scenes are all over the place, and it's always like just this perfect picture. It's like the perfect family, perfect experience and all that stuff. And I always look at those and I go, man, what a disconnect from the real Christmas story. I mean, that's clean and perfect, and the Christmas story is just messy and anything but peace. I mean, you think about, I don't think we can connect with this, but you know, the Romans are ruling at that time, and you know, as you said, I mean, it's fear. And then you think about their story. I mean, Mary's pregnant and out of wedlock, which, you know, back then it was like if there was cancel culture, Mary would have been out as far as that's concerned. Yeah. And then you have Joseph, and I mean, it's not what he had intended. And you know, here he is, everyone's telling him to divorce her, and he's staying with her. I can only imagine what he was getting. And then, I mean, I don't know if you all have had a pregnant wife, 8.5 months, and you had to put her on a donkey and travel 90 miles. Okay, I don't think that would have been a peaceful trip by any means. And then you give birth in a barn, and then you have the shepherds, and we always glamorize the shepherds, but these were like big, stinky dudes, you know? These are the last people you want showing up when your wife gives birth and all that stuff. And so I just go like, man, there is anything but peace at that first Christmas.
And yet, you know, peace is like woven through the story of Jesus. Like even before Jesus was born, the prophet Isaiah talked about that Jesus would be the Prince of Peace. It was predicted, it was prophesied hundreds of years before his birth. And then like at his birth, we have the angels, Luke chapter 2, are saying, you know, there's now peace on earth. I think of even like at the nearing the end of Jesus's life when he says, my peace I leave you and my peace I'm going to give you. Like he can give us a true lasting peace, a peace that will transcend like all the problems that we have in life.
Well, I like that when he says my peace, right? My peace I leave you. So that's not the peace of circumstances. Circumstantially, peace doesn't necessarily have to be there. You know, there was a picture that captured, like the best picture of peace was the one that won the election or whatever was a bird singing in the middle of this huge storm. The bird was singing inside of a cave, and that's the one that won the prize. That is a picture of the peace that we can have with God, is that circumstantially our life may not be peaceful, but he can bring peace right in the middle of that.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and you know, Todd, what you were saying just about attaching peace in our circumstances. I mean, if you really think about it, you go, when we pray for things like world peace, which I think is a good thing to pray for, you know, our idea is, man, just all the conflict would be gone. And then you take that from the world and you take that into our world with our families, and you go, okay, I want peace in our family and that there's no conflict. I don't know about you, but I've never seen a family that didn't have any sort of conflict. And so you just go, well, I think the peace that they were talking about was much greater. And I think the idea of Jesus coming into our world going, yeah, when we know that God's with us, everything's gonna be okay, even though it's not okay.
I had a lady come to me after a church service in her 60s saying, I'm really concerned. My parents are in their 90s, and I don't think they know the Lord. Would you pray? And I said, I sure will. What are their names? A couple of weeks later, she said, you know, keep praying. They're far from God. And I said, would they be open to a visit? She said, maybe I'll ask. Ask the two elderly people, could a pastor come visit you? And they said yes. So I walked in, found out he's a multimillionaire. He owned everything, lived the high life. And I knew time was short. I didn't have a whole lot of time. And I asked the question, do you have peace with God right now? He said, no, but I was hoping you could tell me how to find it.
That's awesome.
I couldn't believe it. And so I just spent a few minutes and told them about who Jesus was and what he came to do and how he died on the cross for their sins. They both prayed out loud to receive Jesus Christ. And I share that story because it was a work of the Holy Spirit. I had nothing to do with it. But they left that day and have been coming to church with a smile on their face. They're at peace with God now. And people need that message today.
That's really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone right now who's struggling to find peace in their life?
You know, from my perspective, I would say the answer is so clear. It is literally committing your life to Jesus. The reality that Jesus can change our life, changes from the inside. It's a slow process, it's a messy process. But the chance that we have to begin again, to truly have peace, as Todd was saying, in every aspect of our life, it's the best news in the world. So taking that first step, taking that next best step with Jesus, man, it's the greatest thing possible, without a doubt.
Yeah, and at Christmas, right? Jesus is the Prince of Peace, the one who brings peace to us, makes it possible.
Reminds me of the old church sign that said, "No Jesus, N-O Jesus, no peace, no Jesus, K-N-O-W Jesus, no peace."
Yeah, I think one of the things that we don't take a lot of time to do because we're always in a hurry, and I don't think we like to go there, is if we're struggling with lack of peace, is to ask ourselves, what's really driving that? What's really causing that? And once you flesh out all the circumstance stuff, because that's what we go to, and just go, well, if everything was great in your life, do you think you'd still have peace? And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'd say no. And then you gotta go, okay, why is that? And I think you really gotta wrestle. And I think if you wrestle honestly enough with yourself, you'll get to a point where you go, something's off with God and me. And that at the end of the day, the only way that can be is if that bridge is closed, and that can only be done through Christ.
You know what, I think that to Mark's point, one of my favorite scriptures talks about, give me a peace that passes all understanding. And too often we base our peace on what I understand, what I know, and what I can make sense of. And when I can't make sense of it, when I'm uncertain, then I don't have peace. But the peace that Mark is talking about is that, and the rest of us are talking about, is that peace that we have with Jesus Christ. I don't have to understand to have peace. I don't have to be able to make sense of it to have peace. But when I'm in Jesus Christ, there is a peace that I can walk in.
Yeah, the one thing I knew the night I received Jesus, and I didn't know much, but I knew that I had a peace that I'd never had before in my life. Couldn't explain it, didn't know anything really much about the gospel, but that was unmistakable to me.
And the phrase I hear from people, like if they lose a loved one, if they know Christ, it's this thing called this peace that surpasses all understanding that everyone points to. And it's a unique thing only found in Jesus.
Divine, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And aren't we hoping that this Christmas season, many people will find peace through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ?
Yes. Yes.